Welcome to another conversation with Liz and her dog Pixie. To remind people who may not have seen the previous video that was, 3 years ago, we are doing a recap to see how now, almost 3.5 years into their relationship, the service dog functionality, the role of the dog for Liz in the past 3 years is, because you get to hear the soon partnered stories and the immediate feedback, and all that is awesome and great and in the right direction, but we don't go back and check in on people years later. So that's what I'm starting to do. It's July 31st, 2023. And our last recording was in August of 2020, when we were still fully in the pandemic, in the early part of the pandemic still. So let me turn it over to you and just kind of catch us up to speed from the last 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So Pixie and I, shortly after, the last session that we did, ended up moving back to Virginia, which is where I'd been for quite a long period of time. At that point, Pixie worked full-time as a service dog for me, while I was actually working full-time for about 2 years on and off. And it was interesting. As most young people do, worked a lot of different jobs during that time, and seeing the way she was able to adapt to every situation was just really incredible to me. I had a first job. It was actually in a medical office. And the most difficult part actually of having her there was the fact that she wanted to help so many people, that it was almost chaotic to explain to people just how intelligent she was sometimes. It was a chiropractic office, and we more often than not would have people who she would be very aware of their pain. And as we mentioned, she does her alerts, and she would be letting me know. She was like, "Oh no, they're not okay." And it's like, yes, that's why they're here. They're good. We're in good hands. I then moved on to a role where I worked as actually a social media manager from home, but would go out and do a lot of photography shoots and things like that pretty often. And once again, she was just able to adapt very, very well to the changing role. When we were at home, she continued on. We did try to have a work environment, I guess, for her at home. I still had a desk. She would still do the same sort of interactions just to keep her knowledge really fresh, and her training really fresh. And then I've since that transitioned to going to school, where she's also just been really incredible. And now we're at a point where actually with my health, she's transitioned to much more of an at-home service animal. She doesn't have to do public access with me in the same frequency. And we're now actually kind of looking at almost finding other ways to add to and fulfill her life as my health has gone down, just to make sure that she's still feeling very purposeful in her world.
You mean your health has improved?
Yes. Oh, my health's improved so dramatically, it's almost hard to explain to people. I've been able to regain so much of my independence that I lost during that period. As we discussed last time, when I went into the clinic, I actually had to wait a long period of time to be able to go into it. Pixie was the reason I was able to, because she literally rehabbed my entire existence.
What were the stipulations that the pain clinic gave you in order for you to be eligible to participate?
So at the time, that stipulations that I was given, as it was explained to me, was being able to drink 16 ounces of water a day, being able to walk consistently, independently, and being able to hold conversation and be a part of a group, which was kind of just described as not, being in so much pain to where I have to be alone or in silence. I was actually able to tolerate being around large groups of people. And so I had to do about a 3-month wait while I was working with Pixie before I was able to go into the clinic and meet that criteria.
And how do you attribute her having helped you obtain the goals that they set for you to participate?
So for a bit of context, at the time I was suffering from really severe gastroparesis, meaning paralyzation of my stomach and both my upper and lower intestines. Pixie was so incredible with this, because the issue I had is that while I did have pain every time I ate, I also had very, very sporadic and severe pain episodes along with that. I had scarring all along my digestional tract that was just exceedingly painful. And so I would get really severe, almost like attacks that would come out of seemingly nowhere. And without being able to predict that, I was constantly on the back end of pain. And as any doctor will tell you, it's much easier to prevent pain than it is to treat it after it's already started. And so what was so amazing about Pixie is she was able to actually see when I would be in pain before I was, whether it was my heart rate. Sometimes I would shake. Sometimes it was a little bit of brain fog, a whole bunch of different attributes, but she was able to pick up on that before I would or anyone around me would, which allowed me to treat my pain proactively as opposed to reactively.
And so she was consistent with that.
Oh, she was incredibly consistent. She was almost too consistent to the point she would wake me up in the night even. So it allowed me to wake up though feeling good in the morning when I would actually get up. I was able to have a consistent sleep schedule for the first time in years. And thanks to Pixie, just even the ease of being around her, I was able to go for a walk. I hadn't gone for a walk in years, quite literally years. At the time of getting her, I was able to actually enjoy being around my family. This is some of the only times that I was able to be a part of my family and be involved in meals, be involved in just going for a walk, sitting outside, having a conversation, and it was because of the way that she treated my pain.
Now, I wanted to actually ask you to comment just briefly on the fact that I didn't even remember you ever telling me this before, that prior to you coming up with the idea that a service dog might be helpful for you, which is how you got led to me, you mentioned that you didn't even particularly care for dogs.
I didn't. My family has always done like foster rescue kind of thing, so I've been around dogs my whole life. We've had a full house as long as I can possibly remember. But growing up, even though I had dogs, I wasn't a dog person. I liked cats. I didn't like, I guess, the insistent nature of most dogs. The smell would get to me. I didn't like the licking and all of that. So I never considered getting a dog. I always was gonna have a cat. Didn't think I'd ever get a dog. And what ended up changing that for me was when I was in a military hospital, Walter Reed. They have therapy dogs that come up to the pediatric unit really whenever they're available. So usually it's at least once a week, but sometimes it's almost every day. And just having their presence and that pure love, there was no condition to it. There was no condition of needing to be well, needing to be active, needing to be any one thing. It was just pure love and innocent joy. And so that really kind of sparked something in me where I became hooked on the idea of a service animal. It took me about 8 months to convince my parents it was a good idea, which is when we ended up finding you. Within roughly the same week, actually, you were one of the first groups or people that we'd reached out to.
So you worked a couple different jobs in Virginia, and now I understand you're living in North Carolina, so obviously other things have changed. So how has she adapted to all the changes that you've been going through in your life?
She's adapted really well. I think that, it's so easy to overlook the fact that she is a living creature too and has her own challenges. But the amazing thing about Pixie is just, I think, the way we work together. It's not that it's always been easy for her. She definitely has, I think, some levels of like separation anxiety with moving a lot, because I move a lot. Normally, being a military kid, it's hard to break the habit. And so that's actually been kind of difficult for her. But what's been really amazing is just the fact that she is so trusting in me that we're able to really adapt and change with that. And I think that it's not so much her adapting or me adapting, but us working together.
You had come up with this thought of a service dog, which was triggered initially by the experience you had with therapy dogs when you were in the hospital at Walter Reed.
Yes.
If you had to do it all over again, would you do what you did?
Honestly, I think that my only regret in the whole process is that I didn't find you sooner to get more time with this little snuggabug. That truly is all I can say.
If you were going to give any words of wisdom to somebody who might be watching this who's interested in going into developing a service dog partnership, what would be your words of recommendation?
It's interesting because I think it's easy and hard to say this at the same time. But the biggest thing is go with the process. It's not easy and it's not always fun. It's really it's easy to make it seem like this process will be so amazing. You get a puppy and you get to bond with them and they'll be your perfect animal and they'll fix your whole life. It doesn't go that way, unfortunately. It's so much more complex than that. It will be the most rewarding experience of your life, but it is so difficult because a lot of the work is internal too. So listen to yourself and listen to your dog and listen to your trainer, especially for POTS or other kind of invisible disabilities that are so impactful in how we interact with the world. You have to listen to yourself. You have to go into it and know your limits and push your limits. And then as far as the dog goes, I think listening to them and knowing their needs, with Pixie, the process was so complex. At first, it was trusting in her was really, really hard because I had not had things go well in the past. And so actually trusting that she knows best and I need to listen to her and she is right, which sounds so strange to do, but it's true. And then as, we moved forward, it was really hard. I think the biggest challenge I had actually was as I got better, I needed her less. And for me, for a long time, I had a sense of guilt about that because she fixed so much in me that now I don't need her to fix anything else because it's fixed and it's good and it maintains. As things change and grow, changing and growing together and knowing that the partnership doesn't have to look any one way to be exactly what's right for you.
Well, that's a really nice way to put it. I think one of the things that I want to say for the record on this, that I don't talk about much, is that my ultimate goal, especially when I'm working with young women, I work with people of all ages and all kinds of challenges, but if I'm looking at a population of young women, a lot of whom have health issues that are complicated by anxiety or other mental health challenges, hi Pix, and that and in your previous video, we'll make sure that it's, that the link to that is here if people haven't seen it first, is how can I put it? That the dog figured you out so quickly, got you through this really hard place, was able to be with you in the hospital, and you commented in that piece about how having her be so wholly wanting to help you gave you the wherewithal, the strength to do the work that you needed to do in order to get better. And now you're doing better enough that she's still with you. She's still a very integral part of your life. She still gets you out and moving, I'm imagining.
Oh, yeah.
But your need for her as in public access stuff is not needed, or is not needed as often. And so that's ultimately my goal, that people who couldn't do things, the dog's behavior and relationship allows you to get better. And then you don't need the dog in the same way. And generally speaking, in my experience with the numbers of people, if it's going to work, because some people don't do the work and it doesn't work, because that's an important part too. But when it works, it's usually between 1.5 to 3 years. The presenting challenges that were so all-consuming have really tapered off into a very manageable way. And that's what I see has happened for you with Pixie, right? But she's still moving every time you move. She's still a very important part of your life.
She's my everything.
She's your everything. Is there anything else that you can think of that might be helpful for people to know that we haven't touched on?
I think it's interesting how hard I think having a service dog is, which I feel like is one of the most important things kind of to touch on in a strange way. Is like it is a real challenge going into it. I went into it with such rose-colored glasses of like, this is perfect, it fixes all of my problems and I get to do it with this gorgeous dog and look at how perfect my life's gonna be. And don't get me wrong, she's gorgeous, that's absolutely true, and I love working with her and it was wonderful. At the same time, the way the world interacts with you isn't easy. I had a lot of challenges. Just something to really keep in mind going into it is you need a support system. There will be challenges going into it, and if you look at it with this will not be easy, this will be worth it, it's so much easier to go into it as opposed to, oh, this is great, everything's perfect, now my life's wonderful. Really having that idea of like, this is a challenge and this will make my life better than I can possibly imagine it. And just the last thing I was going to add is a thank you, I think. I wanted to say that, like, truly, I would not be anywhere near where I am in my life without Pixie. She changed everything for me. And like I said, it was very hard to have to push myself in that way, but I couldn't have done it without her. I hadn't done it without her. And thanks to her, I have a full life and a full life ahead of me. Well,
you're more than welcome, and this is why I do what I do. It gives me great pleasure to share the magic of dogs that I've known about really my whole life. So thanks.